Welcome to Simply Business. I'm your host, Taylor Lee, and I'm so excited to have you here. As a business consultant, I've helped countless business owners simplify their strategies and achieve their goals, and now I'm here to bring you this expertise right to your ears. Each episode, I'll be sharing tips and strategies to help you achieve your business goals without the overwhelm. I will also be chatting with business owners and industry experts to share their stories, insights, and lessons they've learned along the way. Let's dive in and simplify your business. Bronte, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I'm actually so excited for today. I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. For a little bit of context for everyone listening, I did my first ever internship with Bronte back in 2019, I think it was. So I was studying social media at uni at the time. I went to like a workshop, I think, of yours, and then you were like, would you want to intern? I was like, oh my God, really? So that's how that we know each other, which is cool to have a full circle moment, be doing a podcast together. But for anyone that doesn't know you, I would love a little bit of context just into who you are first, and then we'll go into the business side of things.
So thank you so much. I know it's so fun that you interned, and then watching your growth and being able to be here today is amazing. I'm Bronte Creswell. I own Dash Academy, and I have been in the social media game for about 10 years. No, probably more than that. I feel like I've been saying 10 years for like 3 years. So I previously owned a marketing agency, which I think we're going to dive into a little bit, which is exciting. And I had that for about 5 years, built that up to being quite a successful brand and business. And then I sold that a couple of years ago, and now I train in the social media space. So I have been very embedded in that digital marketing space for a really long time now, and it's absolutely, what lights me up. So I'm really, really excited that I'm still able to carry through in that industry.
Yeah, I feel like you're really an industry leader in that kind of a space, because my degree was the first like official social media degree that they were starting. And then, being able to intern with you where you were specializing in social media in your agency. So what made you get into social media, like almost like specializing in that and like the digital marketing side of things? Because you obviously studied at uni. So how did your business, your agency rather, come about?
It's actually funny that you say that, because when I was at uni, you were at USC.
Yeah.
They didn't have social media. That was not anything that they were offering. And I think it was literally the year that I left, they started offering it.
Yeah.
So all the interns that I had coming through, and even staff were like, oh, we're learning this, this, and this. And I was like, that would have been great to learn.
Yeah, I would have liked that.
I studied public relations. So there's similar elements to it. It's all about, brand perception and, how you relate to the public and everything. So I was able to use elements of that, but it definitely wasn't focused on it. So while I was studying at uni, I was actually managing organic accounts for the brands that I was working for. Like I was working for a retail store, So I was managing their accounts, and then I was working for a venue, and I was managing their accounts. But I didn't know what social media strategy was or anything. I was just sort of posting and trying to figure out what was working best and what wasn't, and what kind of content the audience was liking and what was looking good. And from that, definitely started to get really good results. So when I did finish my degree, I sort of recognized that and was like, I actually really like this space probably more than PR, which is annoying because I was like, I just got a degree. I went and got a job in a marketing agency, which was amazing to learn so much about this space. But I definitely felt like the organic side just wasn't celebrated. It was kind of like the ugly duckling in the corner, that they would be like, oh, we're doing all this great marketing and like this, and this. And then we can add on organic content if you want it sort of part of a package.
Yeah.
And then even the way it was approached strategically was like, oh yeah, we can do, a post here or there. And there was no strategy put behind it.
Yeah.
So when I recognized that, I sort of was like, okay, I'm going to leave this agency and just see what I can do in this space and start working for myself. And I had no idea what I was doing, which I think most of us when we're starting have no idea.
Yeah.
So I literally quit, and everyone told me not to quit. Everyone was like, do not quit. You just got out of uni. You've only got a year's experience. You shouldn't be leaving a job that you've just got. It's a dream job, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just have this feeling inside that I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
So I quit that and started just doing a little bit of social media from my kitchen table. Was just trying to figure out what it meant to even own a business. And when I started to, partner with brands, I was really focusing on that organic content side, and we started to get really good results, which was just really cool to see because, like I said, it was previously kind of overlooked as like a really prominent channel that brands should be looking at. So with that, I started to, grow a little bit more. I was able to hire within 6 months. And then I found that brands were sort of coming to me being like, hey, I also need email marketing, or I also need like ads. We've been getting such great results with you. I don't want to go anywhere else. Like, can you offer this even if you're partnering with other people? Like, can we make this happen? And that was really where the idea of the agency came from. So I definitely never set out to start an agency. I actually, even when I quit the original marketing firm that I was with, I was like, I'm just going to give myself 6 months. Honestly, after 6 months, I thought I was going to be going and getting a job. And I was like, I'll just play around, have a little business for 6 months, see what happens. And then, to end up having an agency and being able to sort of launch it in that way, I was like, oh, cool. This was, I think always meant to be the path that I was meant to be on. But it was never the initial intention.
Yeah. Did you always grow your agency purely on organic? Like content? Did you ever do like any paid ads and things like that?
Yeah, no, we did. Like we ended up offering a full suite of everything. And I think that it took me a little bit to realize that when you're looking at an overall strategic approach, there does need to be so many different activations to kind of take the customer through that journey and to be able to look at different ways for the brand to connect with their audience. But my beginning definitely was in that organic space. And I actually love that because I think that there's so much that is almost born in the organic space in terms of like what content is working or what your audience is responding to that you can then carry through to everything else. And it makes it much more powerful. Even, running ads, that was really big at the time, but people weren't really focusing on the role that organic was playing in the ads performance. So people found you through ads, but your organic was completely flat. They weren't actually getting as good results, whereas when those two were working together. So it did eventually, but it definitely sort of started in that space.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like organic, you get to like trial and test things, see what works, see what doesn't for free. And then also too, something I've been speaking about with a lot of clients is like the marketing funnel where if people are finding you, but then you don't have a good process to bring people down. So it's exactly it. Your ad can be amazing, but then your website sucks, or you come into your other content and it's shit. You're getting all the clicks, but like no conversions.
Exactly. And it's like, I think with ads a lot of the time, or like other sort of platforms and approaches, you're sort of relying on the people that are ready to buy straight away. Whereas I, as a consumer, am someone who loves to like monitor brands and get to know them and understand them a little bit more. And that's really the role that organic can play as well. So it's like based on that trust building, but also based on when they might be ready to buy from you or when they might be ready to like partner with you. And as we know, building that community is just valuable completely across the board, and that's sort of the space to do it. So
no, I love that. You're like an analytical buyer. I'm the exact same, where I'm like going through all the different options, and then people that are like so like expressive, and then they're just like they're in. I'm like, wow, that's so foreign to me.
I know. I'm literally the same. It's like whenever you learn any sales and it's like, close them on the call. Whenever people try to do that with me, I'm like, it's not that I'm not interested. I just need to tell you up front, I'm not going to buy on this call. And it's not because I'm not going to buy. I'm just not doing it today.
Literally, I'm going to have all the tabs open. I'll have their competitors. I'll be like going between it. I like recently invested in something. I'm like, I was thinking about on that for like 3 months. Like I was just like going back and forth. Again, her organic content, her paid content. And I was like, yeah, fine. Like now I'll do it kind of thing.
100%. I mean, I'm like that with clothes even. Like I was buying boots the other day and I had like literally 30 tabs open. I was like, okay, I'm getting ridiculous.
Pros and cons of all the different brands, pricing.
All of it.
I love it. Talk to me about scaling your agency, because when I was there, it was just you and Steph.
Yeah.
And then I like remember seeing it like on social, and then it was like you'd sold the agency, and I was like, holy shit, like this thing has grown, which of course, like that was always going to be the case. But yeah, talk to me through like what that kind of looked like from, like the inside perspective, because I feel like on the outside it can just be like another hire and things like that. But yeah, even for me, I recently hired my first employee and I was like, oh my God, can I even pay her? Like it was a whole thing. So yeah, with whatever comes up for you as I say that.
Oh, it is a whole thing, definitely. And I know I love that, like even for myself, when I really reflect on the journey, I think about sitting at, my kitchen table and like being like, oh, I'm a boss. And like, I remember ordering business cards being like, business people have business cards. Like, look at me go. Versus like where I was at the end of the journey before I sold, just so different. I think initially when I realized, and this was honestly a pep talk I had with myself, when I was still working from home, I had Steph working with me, but she was literally doing like 6 hours a week or something.
Yeah.
And I literally remember having a moment with myself where I was like, okay, where it is right now is cool. It's fun. It's like, you know, I'm making a little bit of money and like I've got a staff member and like people are sort of, you know, using us and enjoying it. But I knew that if this was literally going to be my next kind of career step, that I had to like really take it seriously and really kick it into action and do something with it.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't, then I was still at a stage that I could really easily wrap it up and be like, that was a fun sort of 6 to 12 months. And now I'm going to go back and get a job somewhere. And when I made the decision, I was like, no, this is definitely something that I actually want to explore. That was really when I was like, okay, I'm going to not keep doing what I've been doing, which is just really small scale, kind of playing around with things. And I was like, what are the big moves that I actually have to make right now? So the things that I did was kind of the first initial things I think was I threw a really big launch party for the agency and I signed a commercial lease, which is where you came to intern, which was like a baby office. But even that felt massive at the time because, you know, it was my first commercial lease, but also social media managers did not have offices at that time, really. They were all sort of doing it from home. It was all like very small scale. And for me, that was a decision I made because I was like, I want people to see us differently and I want people to see the brand and be like, oh yeah, you know I can go in, because there was still also a lot of distrust in the digital space with brands partnering with social media managers. So I was like, they know there's a physical location, they'll have that trust, people will be able to like recognize us a lot more easily. It'll set us apart from everyone else. And then throwing a big launch party, I was like, I'm just going to invite everyone that I can think of in the business space on the coast and get our brand out there. And that, like, it doesn't sound big, but that was basically all the money I had to invest in the business. And I did it in that go. And I was like, I just feel like this is what I have to do to really like set the standard of who we are. And I literally remember, it's so funny. This is like horrific to me now because I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I do that? But I honestly remember one day sitting there with Steph and I think we'd had the agency for like 2 weeks and we had done the launch party. It was really great success. We had heaps of leads, heaps of people talking about us. And I looked in the business bank account, there was $7 in there.
Holy shit.
I know. And I literally laughed because I was like, genuinely wasn't concerned. Like I was like, I knew that we had like sent out a bunch of invoices. I knew people were going to pay. I knew like I'd paid a lot of the expenses that like were coming out. But I was like, that's how closely I was like cutting it at the start. Like I was like, I feel like I've done this the right way, but like this is stressful.
I feel like the first employee as well, like Kira Lee sees that too, and like Steph, and you're just like, wow, I remember when we were both like in like the office, like $7, like interesting.
Literally, I know, like, and I even said it to her and she's like, is that concerning? I was like, no, like we've got, you know, this bill's coming in, like that person's paying, so like we'll be fine. Like I was like in my head, like, should I be more concerned about this? And knowing what I know now in business, I would be a lot more terrified. But I think having that sort of naive approach at the start actually worked really well for me.
It's like the delusion. It's like honestly, delusion got me there.
Literally, and I still feel like I try to like convince myself, like bring in a little bit of naivety in decisions I'm making sometimes, because it just helps me like take away the fear and be like, just do it, see what happens.
Yeah,
you know,
give it a crack.
Like follow what you think you should do, because that's kind of what's got you here so far. So yeah, from there, that was like sort of the beginning phase. And then that really, really did set us up well, because I noticed that basically from the get-go, people were constantly saying to me like, oh, I've heard of you, I've heard of the business. And people I wouldn't even know where they would have heard of it from. So I was like, okay, cool. I've done that really initial brand awareness phase. Now it's just obviously working on, you know, getting the results and backing that up with something that is, you know, we can showcase what we can actually do for businesses. So that was the next big thing, was really just, you know, starting to convert all of those leads, starting to showcase the results we were getting, focusing on that organic side, and then working in all of the other channels. And then once we had, some consistency with that, I was able to kind of look at it and go, okay, I think that from this point, again, we're at that sort of stage where it's like, it's stable, but I've got to make some big moves in order to get to that next stage. So that was when I moved offices. And I also remember hiring, I literally, I had Steph and then I had another team member. So there was 3 of us. We moved into a bigger office space that was a beachside office. And I looked at the amount of like spaces that we needed filling. Like we needed an ad specialist, and I needed someone on email, and I needed an account manager. And I was like, you know, realistically, I should have staggered those hires and I should have been like, okay, what needs to come in when? But I literally just went out, interviewed for all of them, hired for all of them.
Holy shit.
I know. And I remember talking to my accountant and he was like, so what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, so I just filled those 3 roles. And I know that it's probably too soon and you're probably going to be like, why didn't you train them one by one? But like, they're all here now and I'm just going to get them into it and we're going to make this happen. And he was like, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
But it worked really well, you know, and that was another thing that really helped us step up because it helped our profitability. It helped, you know, customers have trust with us in terms of what we were delivering as well. And then from there, I ended up having 8 staff members at one point and 12 contractors we were working with. And the team got really big.
Yeah, that's fucking huge. Did you just kind of have that energy as well where I'm like so logical in business where I'm like, hey, run the numbers like this? Was it that delusion as well where you're just like, we'll hire it and it'll just work kind of thing?
Yeah, it's funny because it's not like completely like, you know, I'm an idiot running around being like, oh, just do it and see what happens. Like you look at it enough that you're like, I can make this decision somewhat comfortably, but I also can see like a million things that could go wrong or like I can see that there's other ways I could do this that's probably safer.
Yeah.
But at some point you just have to kind of pull the trigger and be like, okay, if I pull this trigger, these are the things I'm going to have to really quickly do and really focus on. And if you're confident you can do that and you know that it's going to like really help that decision work, then you know, go for it. And that's what I've always kind of done.
Yeah.
And that even helps me now. Like if I'm, you know, tossing up a big decision I've got to make that feels scary, I'm like every single big jump I've had in business is after one of those moments. So kind of pushes you.
Yeah, no, I feel that as well. Did you have, I guess this is something that I wouldn't have known, but like, did you have a mentor in business? Like, did you have anything like that? Even when I think to you being like, okay, I need an ad specialist, like where were you learning this? And like, where were you getting this from?
No, I did not have a mentor. And I honestly wish I did. Like I actually, you know, I had no idea what I was doing early days. Everything I did was kind of guessing, seeing how it would work out, making decisions based on that. It was very much myself.
Yeah.
Which I feel like if I had a mentor and I had someone helping me structure things and make certain decisions, I actually probably would have grown a lot quicker, a lot sooner.
Yeah.
Or gotten to a certain level or had certain things set up in better ways. But, you know, I'm obviously really grateful that I was able to sort of guess my way through those early days. But yeah, it is honestly something I get asked all the time. It's like, how did you know the moves to make? But it was really just looking at what was working and sort of making decisions around it. And I think probably the reason I wasn't looking for mentors or anything at the time is because I felt like that digital space, there wasn't that much happening in it at the time, or especially sort of what we were building.
Yeah.
There was only really one other prominent brand in the area that was doing anything similar. So I think I had in my head like, oh, no one else is going to understand. And like we're sort of semi-paving the way without it sounding like that big a deal. So I just sort of thought that I had to navigate it myself, knowing now that, of course, a business coach or someone would have been able to help me navigate it a lot better.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just me.
I really think like there's someone else and she like grew up on the coast and she's got an agency now in Sydney, which you might know who I'm talking about, but she's the same. And she's like, I've never had any mentors. I'm like, sometimes I think too, there's obviously mentors are great, but I think some people can hire mentors from the wrong space. And I've even been there in the past where it's like fully outsourcing your power versus like you actually do know the answers and you can almost, like you were saying, like almost replicate someone else's business and lack what you actually need to learn, because business is a journey for yourself as well, and people just want to avoid making any kind of mistakes by hiring a mentor.
Totally. Definitely. I think if you go into it kind of knowing what your strengths already are and what you're confident in and the areas that you want to get some guidance on, but always trusting yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think you're so right. Like when people go into it and they're like, tell me everything, I don't know what I'm doing. You do give up that power, and it's like, it's power that's got you here. It's a power that's made you make the decision to even have a business. Like still hold on to that, but be really realistic with yourself on the areas that you may need support or guidance.
Yeah, I love that. Shifting gears slightly, so you sold your agency a couple of years ago now. What was the thought process? What made you sell your agency?
I know, it was honestly such a big moment. Like it felt really, really just huge in my life at the time. And it was really funny. Like I feel like the moment leading into deciding to sell, it kind of felt like when I realized that I had that feeling, I was like, I do think that's where I'm at. I realized that I probably had actually had that feeling for like the last 6 to 12 months before that I just hadn't recognized. And it was very, very subtle to start with. It was building up until consciously I was like, oh, that's what I'm feeling at the moment.
Yeah. It's like when you know you need to break up with someone.
Totally. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually I've been feeling that for ages. Yeah. Honestly, similar process. And it was really funny. It was like at the start of that year. So I think I ended up selling in September, and in January we set goals for the brand. I was like, we're going to do this, this, and this. And, this is the growth I want to have. This is the clients, this is everything. And we started to achieve it. And then it was kind of like the more we started to achieve, the more this feeling was growing for me that I was like, this is just not like lighting me up anymore. So I think there was two kind of elements that led me to sell. One of them was just personally and internally. Like I felt like I dove into this brand that I didn't know what I was going to do with, built it up, was really proud of myself, but was looking at it being like, okay, I've built this business, but I haven't actually even asked myself, like, is this the type of business that I want to build? Like, hadn't really, thought about that journey at all. It was just all of a sudden I was standing in a room looking around being like, oh, I've built quite a big business and, it's going really well. And it's amazing. But this wasn't really conscious decisions to get here. So I think for myself internally, there was a bit of a like looking around being like, okay, if I've been able to achieve this, amazing. But if there is a draw card of me wanting to look at other areas, I feel like I'm not really serving my team and I'm not really serving my clients in the way that I should be.
Yeah.
If I've got that desire, and I knew there was so many people that would have, really wanted to get their hands on the brand and get in and do that. So I felt like a responsibility there, and I felt like for myself, I was also quite burnt out, which, happens in business. So that was one side of it. And then the other side of it was I was getting really excited by what I was seeing in the industry with training. A lot of the brands that were even coming to us at the agency, they were like talking about not understanding social media, or I would talk to them and I would be like, you actually don't need an agency to run your accounts. You just need to understand them more. Like they would be complete startups and have no budget. I'd be like, I need to be, posting. And I'd be like, there's just so much potential here for like really high quality training.
Yeah.
Also a lot of in-house teams that just were not confident in their approach. So I saw that side and just was like, I really love training. I'd always train. There was always this really small training element in the agency. I'd run workshops and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was just a moment that I sort of sat down and was like, this is a feeling I have. I have to recognize that. I know there's a massive potential for a different sort of avenue over here.
Yeah.
And then from there, it was just starting to get the ball rolling, which was, really confronting. Because it was also something I had to do myself. Before I could tell anyone what I was really doing, I really had to like come to terms with that feeling, recognize it was real, make the decision, and then I could start to kind of talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that, did anyone approach you to buy the agency, or you put it like up? So I'm like, how do businesses sell? I'm like,
I know.
Realestate.com?
No, it's actually, I know. I also get asked about this because so my journey was same thing. I was like, how do you sell a business? I'm pretty sure I even Googled how to sell a business. Like I was like, I have no idea. And I got a business broker. I was like, I guess that's what you do. That was kind of what popped up everywhere. I got a business broker. He was like, great, this is amazing. Like, this is all the things we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, cool, signed here, like paid his setup fee and stuff, which is they're ridiculously priced. And they also take a massive cut of your profit, like what you sell. But I was like, cool, if this is what I have to do, that's fine. And then I remember talking to him about everything I wanted. And I was saying, like I'm burnt out. I don't want to be in the business anymore. I'm happy to do like a handover period that's fair. I'll do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. Spoke to him about it, really explained it. He was like, sounds amazing. Let's do this. And then I remember him coming to me being like, I've got the best, offer, blah, blah, blah. Let's talk it through. I'm going to put you in touch with the buyer. So like speaking to the buyer and like really started the process. And he was like, yeah, but it all looks really good. And then he brought the offer to me and I literally started crying when I saw it. Because I was like, what is this? Like, it wasn't just the money. Like the money was nothing. It was like all the terms. He wanted me to stay in the business for like a year or something. He wanted this, and this. He wanted all these things that I said I wasn't going to include. All these ridiculous clauses. Like it just was honestly the worst offer.
Yeah.
And I remember the business broker being like, no, this is really like you want to sell. This is what you have to do. This is what it looks like. And I was like, no, like you have not listened to a single word I said. Like, this is not it. He was like, oh, blah, 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 like trying to convince me. I was like, no, can you just cancel your entire contract? Like, this is not, if this is the first thing you brought to me, you do not understand anything that I've said.
Yeah.
So I ended up canceling him. And then I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. I've done everything else myself. Let's see what I can do. So
It's so classic of you. I'm going to become a business broker as well.
Literally, again, so naive, just being like, I'll just figure it out. Honestly, though, the biggest thing that I always say to people in business is if you have a good accountant and a good lawyer, you honestly can do anything yourself. And that still stands true. Everything I've been through, I'm like, if I can call my accountant and my lawyer and be like, am I allowed to do this? And they say yes, then you can do it.
Yeah.
So I reached out to a few friends I knew in business, sent them an NDA, and was like, this is what's happening. You can't talk about it, but do you have any contacts that you feel like would be interested in it? If you do, put them in touch with me. I'm going to start the process myself. And because I'd been through a little bit with the broker, I kind of knew the things to ask and, mention. And then, ended up finding a buyer and went through the process. And it was painful across the board for anyone who has sold a business. I remember going into it, a few people saying to me oh, selling in business is really, really difficult and it can take 6 months and it's always rocky. And I was like, no, this is going to be fine. It's not that big a deal. It was everything everyone said it was going to be. But end of the day, you have to recognize what your goal is. And if you achieve that goal, which is getting out of the business and selling it to someone who's, planning to carry it on, you just have to be happy with that. So yeah, it was a big process though.
Yeah. And it's so hard as well because you could look at a house, right? You could get an evaluation on it and you can obviously do that with a business, but especially when it's your own, you're like, so how much is this worth? And the years that I've put into it and removing your personal experience from it as well.
Totally. And I think that is such a big thing. A lot of people don't realize what people actually care about because you're going, well, this exists and this exists and this is the potential. And then they're like, does not matter.
Yeah.
And you've got to put yourself in the shoes of a buyer. Of course, it doesn't matter to them. They don't care about all of that. They want to see the numbers and exactly what they're buying and what they're literally going to have their hands on.
Yeah.
That's what they care about putting in money into. But I think for me, as long as that price felt fair in terms of literally looking at what I was actually handing over, not all the things that I felt I was giving, I was looked at it, I was like, this is a fair price. I also just had to recognize everything that business had given me outside of it. So I tried to not look at it as I've put in 5 years of energy for this. I was I put in 5 years of energy and got 5 years of amazing results and clients and everything else that comes with having a brand. And then this is just kind of the finale, I guess.
Yeah. So we've pivoted now from selling the agency into what you do now, which is working with, I believe you specialize with just social media managers. Is that correct with who you work with?
Yeah, at the moment. Yeah, which actually wasn't my plan initially. So when I first sold, like I sort of said, I was had worked with a lot of business owners. So I knew that there was so much potential for brands who wanted someone to teach them how to do social media, whether they were startups or they were small businesses looking to grow, or they were brands that had a team that, didn't know how to do it, which was often I love working with a man who owns a business and he's like, my wife's trying to do the social media. She doesn't know how. So I'm jump in with her. I'm like, here's everything you need to know. Here's how you schedule. Here's how you set up a strategy. So that was my plan. I was like, cool, I'm going to do that. And I started doing that, but then I had 3 different social media managers that were within my network reach out post-sale and be like, oh my gosh, I'm really trying to scale my social media business. I would love to sit down and have a coffee with you. Can you give me some advice? Talk me through it, put together a coaching package. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do a little bit for you, but I don't really know what I can go through properly. And then going through it with those 2, I was like, oh, this is a massive space. I did not realize how much I had defined in terms of processes and setup and approach and everything else.
Yeah.
Then I have really shifted more into working with the social media managers now, which is amazing. And I love it.
Yeah, so cool. Do you have the vision to scale that up into team again? Or are you now that you've done that, are you more so about the lifestyle, if you will? What's your vision for that?
It's so hard. I really, when I sold, I was I'm never going to have an in-house team again.
Yeah.
I just really felt it's a really big thing. And it's not to say, I think what I had to realize when I was building the brand is that when you start to build a team and you take on all these additional overheads and you take on management and everything else, it's kind of you go from working and offering the services and doing everything you love. Then you're building this team and you're building all of these things. And the idea of doing that and putting in the hard yards and spending the time managing and doing all the rest of it is that so in 5 years' time, that's when you can really start to step out. You've set the groundwork, you've done all the things that need to happen for you to then have that lifestyle on that end of it. And because I was only sort of halfway through that process, I felt for myself, that was why I stepped out, because I was I know if I kept going down this path, I would end up in the space that everyone would know what they're doing. I could step out. I could start to get more freedom. We would be scaled to that level, blah, blah, blah. But it was really recognizing that there was still a little while to go to get there. And I was like, I just don't have the energy to continue. So where I am now, I'm probably at the point where I do need to hire at least some support. But what I'm looking at, rather than hiring a team and, getting everyone on at once like I did once upon a time, I'm more just looking into specialty areas. So, looking at someone to do my ads for me rather than hiring an ad specialist in-house. I'm like, who can I get that's amazing at ads that I can partner with to do that? And then who can I get that's amazing at, content development to partner with me on that, and building more of a team that's like contractor based, so I can work with people in really specific areas, take the pressure off myself, and make sure that I'm, building the brand in the way that I want to. At some point, I may need to look at actually building an in-house team, but at the moment, this is what feels really good. I still have that freedom. I still have that sense of like, it's my brand and I'm just activating the areas that need it. But yeah, at some stage, maybe.
Yeah, see where it goes.
Yeah.
See where the wind blows you. So for anyone listening that potentially they haven't got a business, or potentially even for someone that's like, oh my God, I could get a social media manager in, I'd love you to like kind of give a rundown of what the role of a social media manager looks like. Obviously there's like some more intricate things, but just as an overview for anyone that maybe they're studying at uni and they're like, oh my God, I could do that for myself. I could freelance, or maybe, someone that would be from a business owner perspective to outsource social media. Because what you were just saying then, like, it's all around outsourcing. So if someone wants to outsource, what does like, I feel like a day in the life or kind of like something like that can kind of give people insight into what social media managers actually do. Because I think a lot of people like, you just post on TikTok. And you and I both know it's like, oh girl, no.
So much more.
I wish it was that easy.
Totally. No, absolutely. So yeah, when it comes to social media managers, in terms of like a role, there's kind of two sides to it. You can either be in-house, which is working in a brand and doing it, as part of that team, or you can do it freelance, / agency, where you're offering that services to multiple brands. And honestly, they're fairly similar in terms of process. In-house, you have the chance to really, really deep dive into that business and brand, and it is actually beneficial. It can be really beneficial because you know the brand back to front and you know day-to-day what's happening. So there's not as much of a need for like meetings to understand what's going on and like having to, have a look at what kind of content's going to be approved for the brand because you work in that business. So it's a lot easier, those types of processes.
Yeah.
But I do find that being a freelancer and offering it, there's often, because you're working with so many different brands, you kind of understand on a deeper level what's working across the board, and you can test strategies across multiple brands, which kind of increases your understanding.
So true.
Yeah, so they are two really different approaches, but obviously that in-house, you can really deep dive into that particular business. So both have benefits. In terms of being a freelancer, the kind of process that I take my students through is, initially, that obviously, you get your leads. Initially, you have that conversation with them around what it actually is that they want to achieve. And this is something that I notice a lot of newer people in the industry, they're normally talking to them about what package they want, or, how many posts on TikTok they want. And I really have to help them reshape that, because I'm like, that's like irrelevant almost. What they actually want to achieve is what dictates what posts you're doing and where they're doing them. So that initial discussion is always like, tell me about your business. What do you actually want to achieve with it? What are the gaps that are currently happening with it? How many sales do you want to make? What other marketing activations do you have? Figure that out, get really clear on that. And then as a social manager, when you're designing that package, it's really based around, what they want to achieve and what package is actually going to help them achieve that. And then when I have clients sign on, the first thing that I also always get them to do is to obviously define a strategy and then optimize the accounts, which is a step that a lot of social media managers do tend to skip, just purely by not, realizing how important it is. But with my strategy, I then always jump into the accounts, make sure the bio's optimized and the account's set up properly and everything's linked correctly and their highlights are good and their pin posts are good and everything else that's obviously going to make that account successful is done before I start posting. Because
so true.
I know you don't want to start posting and then realize the downfall of all this incredible content that you're putting together and you're creating for this brand.
Your link in bio sucks.
Literally. Or like you don't have the address up properly, or like, your bio is just like messy and no one understands what you do, or your highlights are like 3 years old, which happens all the time. So And then obviously moving into like that content. And even in the content stage, so much testing happens as well, which I think a lot of people don't realize how much of social media is looking at what might be working, but testing it for that brand. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that sort of summarizes it. Day in the lifestyle is definitely it's so varied, especially when you're working in multiple brands, but even if you're working in-house, it is always a little bit different. I
Yeah.
really love having a super clear structure to try to like get on top of that because it is really hard when you're constantly jumping around. But yeah, in terms of people thinking that it is just like throwing together a post, there is normally, I think the biggest thing that people don't realize exists there is the research and is the testing. There's so much research that goes into every single post, and then putting it together, the editing, what cover you're going to use, what hook you're going to use, what's the caption going to say, how you're going to optimize it.
Yeah.
And that's every single post. So it is a lot bigger than people realize, but I do think people are starting to understand how big that social strategy actually is.
Yeah, it's massive. And I love the point you made around like having your goals and objectives from the start. And this can apply for anything. It could be someone in their fitness journey. Because I'll like, when I've got like PT clients and they're like, yeah, I don't really like have any goals. Like, I'm just like happy to like, get some better engagement. I'm like, okay, but you sit down and you have a consult with your client and it's like, okay, this is what we want to achieve. If they want to lose weight, it's going to be different to someone wanting to gain muscle. So you alter the strategy based on that. So yeah, I love that. And there is so much that can go into it. I find with myself, I can be guilty of like, and you might have this as well, where I like teach people all the things and I'm like, yep, you want to do this. And it comes to my own and I'm like, oh, well, I'm like,
100%.
Taylor, like girlfriend, do your research. And like, yeah, coming into so much more market research this year, I'm like, oh my God, it's all making sense. You're applying what you're teaching people.
Totally. See, I think for me, I have the exact same thing. And I think what I do is I overwhelm myself because I understand the space so in depth and I understand all the testing areas. Like I get so overwhelmed with being like, okay, I'll do this post and I'm like, but I should also test this and like I should also look at this. And I'm like, I better and like I actually know too much at this point about it, so it makes me overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But because of that, like that is something that I've recognized recently. I'm like, I am just holding myself back. So I am partnering with a content sort of strategist. She's a friend, but she's amazing in that space. So I was like, if that's an area holding me back right now, that's an area I'm going to invest in.
Yeah.
Which seems ridiculous because it's what I do, but I'm literally paying her basically so we can sit down and brainstorm and make a plan that I can implement. Because I'm like, I just need to like have something to check off because I'm going to like send myself crazy.
No, I feel like that's what I need. I realized the other day because yeah, strategy is like a huge strength of mine and I love having a plan and that's what I help clients with. But then when it comes to myself, it's like fucking crickets. And it's the same with like writing a caption. I'm like, fuck. But then I can do it for clients like left, right, good
100%.
night. And yeah, I worked with a like email marketing expert and I was like, oh my God, like you're pretty much just like repeating anything that I would have known probably 90% of that, but it's good to just have someone to soundboard off sometimes as well.
No, this is what I get frustrated with as well. Like anytime I've tried to hire people to help me with things, exact same thing. I'm talking to them and I'm like, I already know this. I know what I have to do. Like you're just telling me what I already know. But that's what I think of like the investment is me actually doing it. I'm like, if after you saying it, I actually do it, then it's a worthwhile investment. Even if I'm not paying for the information, I'm paying for the action, that's fine.
Yeah. You know the intention behind the investment. I would love to know before that we kind of wrap it up, when you were speaking about like your students and what you're teaching people with. So what do you really help people with? Is it more so the freelancers and then learning how to kind of optimize their business as a social media freelancer? And what does that look like?
Yeah, so I have, I do still work with some business owners and in-house teams. So I do mostly coaching with them. I do have a course in that space, but I do find a lot of the in-house marketers, like I said, whether it's a wife or a daughter or a cousin or whoever working in a business that wants to do social media and do well with it, a lot of them just need a sort of custom 4-week coaching session and then they're really confident in it.
Yeah.
So I do a bit of that. And then on the social media managers side, just working with them, I found that a lot, the biggest thing holding them back is their systems and it's sort of the least sexy part of, business. So when I talk to them about it, like, no, this is my problem. I'm not getting enough leads or I'm not, doing this or I'm spending too much time here. The second we get into it, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, it's the systems holding you back. And there's so many things that kind of go into that. So it's like one of the big things that I talk to them about is obviously firstly your systems is what's going to make you quicker and what's going to cut time down so you can take on more clients, because some of them are managing 2 clients and they feel like they're at capacity. I'm like, you should be able to take on 8 to 10 clients and still feel really in control of what you're doing. And that comes down to knowing every single step that you're taking, you have a plan for it, and you have systems to support you through that. So that's one side of it. And then the other side is using those systems and using those processes to create a better experience for their clients.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are undercharging. And I'm like, if you do want to charge higher, you honestly can. You can just add an extra zero to your, bill tomorrow, and that's probably still going to be undercharging. But if you want to be charging at a consistent, strong rate, the biggest thing that people are willing to pay for is the experience. They want to feel like when they're partnering with you, it feels like, worthwhile the investment, that they feel like you're in control, that everything feels polished.
Yeah.
So that's probably the other sort of major part that I work on with them. And then on the other side of that is things like getting leads and getting, proposals out and getting conversions with that. But that's always what they come to me with. And I'm like, that is actually the last thing we're going to focus on. You need everything else in place. So
it's always the way, hey, it's always like the thing they don't think it is. I even had a client, she was a social media manager. This was probably a year ago now. And she was like, I just want to do things more passive so it can be more scalable. But it's like the exact same. It's like, no, your systems just aren't actually optimized. So it's like, no wonder you feel like you're at capacity and you need to focus on passive things where it's like, you can actually do one-to-one clients. I'm the same now with my one-to-ones. I'm like, I can hold way more clients now than I could have a year and a half ago because I'm like, my onboarding process is so streamlined. The way I manage clients is so streamlined. And exactly like you said, it's not sexy. So people don't like it. But I'm like, focus on your systems.
I know. I'm still trying to figure out like the sexiest way to say that, but it absolutely is. And I think for me, it's a really cool space for me to be in at the moment, to be honest, because I remember literally being in that exact spot where my first few months, I was so messy. I had no idea where I should be focusing to grow. I had no idea how to like design a package. Like I was really messy, and I felt this constant like feeling of like, what should I be doing? And then like, even if I was managing 2 clients, I would be like, have I done everything for you this month? And I'd be going through their like accounts, like double checking emails and be like, oh, I think I've done everything. And I would like write a list, and like, it's just even taking away that feeling, the value in that I think is incredible. Like knowing that your systems are backing your, you to be productive and you to feel in control and you to like walk into a space feeling confident in what you're offering. Like I think that is completely invaluable, and that's also where it comes from.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's hard to communicate like that value, like, and give words to that. That's what I find with like, I've come so much more into that now with like what I specialize in. And I'm like, it's that like, we never really started a business to be like, I make 50K months or I make 100K months. It's like the freedom, it's the flexibility, it's the ability to go pick up your kids from school. It's the ability to work on a Sunday like today, but like that's going to come from exactly like you said, your system. So you're not triple checking. You're not like, I missed that. And then you do miss something and then that creates a shitstorm. So it's hard because you can't like tangibly say, this is where my client went from here to here, but you know what it created for them.
Totally. And I think, focusing on that feeling, because like if I can describe that feeling, this is what I found in my marketing. If I can describe that feeling to social media managers, and I'm like, this is probably how you feel right now. A turn, you don't know how to actually grow your business. Like you're literally in bed at night being like, how can I grow? How can I get more clients?
Yeah.
And then, painting the picture of how it can feel.
Yeah.
That has been the most powerful, because like 99% when I describe that first feeling, I'm like, that's me. And I'm like, I know, girl.
I know the amount of clients lately is, if I had $1 for every time someone said overwhelm or I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm like, I wouldn't even need to run a business at this point.
Totally.
But I'm like, trust me, you're not overwhelmed. You just need some systems.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure that was just so much value in such a short period of time. But if anyone's listened to this, they either want to become a social media manager, maybe they're studying at uni, just anything, and they want to be like, where can I find you? What are your socials? Do all the plugs, all
Amazing.
the things.
Cool. Well, I would love to connect. My course is called Socials Boss. So you can find that on my website at dashacademy.com.au. You can also get me on Instagram as my main platform. So that's at dashacademy_. And then you can reach out at hello@dashacademy.com.au as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of Simply Business. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. If that you enjoyed today's conversation, please feel free to share it onto your socials and tag me. I love seeing all of your shares and feedback on the episode. If that you're feeling extra generous, please feel free to follow me over on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok at Taylor Lee Consulting. And a like and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast would be greatly appreciated. I'll catch you in the next episode.